I make a lot of pixel art, but I do it all with my mouse and keyboard, and I've gotten pretty good at using those. I've always wanted to get a nice drawing tablet, but wondered how hard it would be to adjust my habits from mouse and keyboard to using a digital pen. I rely on my habits to make sometimes over 100 individual frames for a single episode of How to Fail at Indie Game Development. Now, I'm not claiming my pixel art is super good by any means, only that I'm pretty fast with the tools I have. So if I were to get a drawing tablet, would the headache of adjusting my 5+ years of habits be worth it? As luck would have it, a company called XPPen reached out and offered to send me one of their drawing tablets if I made a video on it. Of course I accepted. I've always wanted a nice drawing tablet, and I wanted to make a video covering this topic anyway. Full disclosure, I did not become an affiliate because I didn't want that to affect the video in any way. But the tablet I was sent, the Artist Ultra 16, is a very nice tablet, so there is a link in the description if you'd like to check it out. But with the drawing tablet in hand, thanks to XPPen, all I needed was motivation to draw a bunch of pixel art to get better at using it. Conveniently, all this happened just a few weeks before Pixelmania. Pixelmania is a month-long, one theme per day art challenge during the month of May that I started back in 2020 when I first wanted to get better at pixel art, kind of like Inktober, but with pixel art. Most human habits take about 21 days to solidify, and May is 31 days long, so I committed. This year, instead of making pixel art with my mouse and keyboard, I would instead make pixel art with my drawing tablet for every day of May during Pixelmania, and we would find out just how hard it is to pick up new art tools. So here we go. Day 1. I ran into my first problem right away. The model I got from XPPen came with a hotkey remote, which is pretty awesome, but that was also my problem. It was incredibly frustrating to try and use the hotkey remote plus the pen because neither one was adjusted to the hotkeys I needed. So I set aside the hotkey remote for now and just focused on using the pen instead of my mouse. By the end of the first day, I had programmed the pen to do 2 things. With a mouse, I often set the right mouse button to a transparent color, making it a sort of very fast eraser. Also, navigating in Sprite can be done with the middle mouse key. So with the XPPen, there are 2 programmable buttons. I set one to be my secondary color and the other to be my navigation. I already had both these functions as muscle memory on that hand, so keeping them on the pen only seemed natural. The only thing I was missing was the ability to zoom in and out. I found myself getting very frustrated even with my normal keyboard hotkeys and ended up using the mouse a few times. It took significantly longer to draw this than I would have liked, and I wasn't very happy with how it turned out anyway. But hey, that's day 1 down. Day 2. I realized if I'm challenging myself to get good at using the drawing pad, I don't need to also challenge myself with the art. So for this theme, which was Don't Let Go, I settled on something much more simple. This time I included the hotkey remote and programmed my most popular hotkeys. For me, these are the Pencil tool, Fill tool, Line tool, and Select tool, as well as Control Z. There were many more hotkeys that I was going to want if I was going to be completely keyboard free, but I decided to wait and implement those a little at a time. Now you might have noticed there are only 11 buttons and a wheel on the remote, and you are right, but you can set the remote to have 4 different button mappings with 1 button dedicated to swapping between them. What's also cool is you can change the orientation of the remote. I fussed over it a bit, worried that if I learned it a certain way it might not be as good as another direction, but eventually settled on this one, mostly because I felt it was easier to rotate the wheel with my fingers than with my thumb. By the end of the day I was feeling much more confident with the pen, and having a more stable way to zoom in and out was very helpful, and I got familiar with the hotkeys I programmed pretty smoothly because I put them in more or less the same location as they were on the keyboard, though I did misclick them often and had to put significant thought into each time I swapped tools. Day 3. I mostly kept grinding away, but I discovered some new things, both good and bad. First, I found I wasn't zooming in and out as much as I typically do with mouse and keyboard. This is due to the precise pinpoint of the pen and how my basic fine motor skills could draw right where I needed to. So this was good, but I also discovered that I can't see very much of the overall piece while I'm working on it, because instead of only a mouse cursor, I had my whole hand and arm blocking my view of everything to the right of the pen. Is this a sign that I need to touch grass more? Yes, and while it wasn't really that big of a deal, I still felt kinda blind, though I'm sure I would get used to it. Day 4. I went for a very simple 3-color piece just to keep getting my habits down. Day 5. I was still missing several hotkeys, which I'll admit I was turning to my keyboard for. So this day I set up the ability for me to copy paste and delete from the remote, as well as the escape key. Turns out I use the escape key a lot, especially when I'm using the selection tool. It was interesting to see how many keys I use that I don't even notice until I don't have them. Day 6. I was trying to make a really simple one, but just kept adding to it. I guess that's just how art goes. I had some issues swapping between key sets. I ended up making like a billion layers while wondering why I wasn't sampling anything. I'm sure I'll eventually get it down though. Day 7. The theme was It's My Favorite, and I decided to draw a screenshot from my favorite movie. While I was working, at one point, Sprite bugged out and I had to restart. But to restart, I had to switch back to mouse and keyboard, and I felt momentarily confused while trying to use the keys. I'll take that as a sign I'm on the right track. Day 8. I did a study of a nice gas station piece I found while trying to get inspired, and here I discovered one of the best reasons to have a drawing tablet. When it came time to draw this background, I was able to make very fast, broad strokes both while shaping and shading. I was able to use my whole arm and wrist to make these movements, and I got such a sense that I was just coloring on really smooth paper. It was great. Day 9. It was a bit of a cheat day. It's around this time that you can start to feel the pressure of doing pixel art pieces every day, but it was still a good opportunity to ingrain my habits and hotkeys. Day 10. This day was a lot of fun, and probably one of my favorite pieces I did the whole month. And it was at this point that I was really starting to feel comfortable. I didn't really have to translate hotkeys in my mind anymore, and instead of thinking on the keyboard it's this key, so that means it must be this key on the remote, I could just think in terms of the hotkey remote only. I was still struggling a little bit switching between the keybind sets, but besides that, I felt like I was getting things down. Day 11. It was just a hat. I'm just putting in my time practicing. Day 12. This was a fun piece. The theme was dance, and I wanted to portray a dynamic pose with just 2 colors, while keeping the background another color. Using the pen to make some of these curving lines was great. In fact, that was one of the things a mouse struggles with, is making curving lines like these. Though because it was pixel art, I still had to go back through and polish it up a little bit. Day 13. Just some masks on a wall. I felt like I was getting pretty good with hotkeys and habits, and we weren't even halfway through the month. Day 14. The theme for day 14 was time travel, so I kinda cheated and reposted the art from day 1. Hey, this is just me thinking outside the box, okay? Day 15. I really wanted to dive into the ability to make curving lines, because with a mouse you can only really make curving lines in one direction. This is because those smooth curves come from rotating your whole wrist or even your whole arm instead of just your fingers. This is extraordinarily difficult to do with a mouse, so it was kinda great. Day 16. This jet was fun, and I didn't really feel any resistance habitually while working on it. Plus, when it came to the clouds, I was once again able to draw them using a fuller range of motion than I would be able to accomplish with a mouse. Day 17. The theme was perfection, and I decided to draw a circle that was imperfect, and this was the last image I drew for Pixelmania. Because on day 18, I got news that my grandpa had passed away. We knew it was coming. He was quite old and had many health issues, but in order to attend the funeral, I needed to drive across the country, which was great. I drove with my family for 2 days, got to see my family members I haven't seen for years, stayed for several days, and then drove back. But it took a lot of time and effort. The difficulty of bringing everything I would need to keep up on Pixelmania, as well as maintain the brain space and time required to draw every day, became more than I was willing to keep up with. But remarkably, I didn't need a full month to transition from mouse and keyboard to pen. By day 17, I was reaching that flow state I can sometimes get into when working on a pixel art piece. I no longer had to put thought into how I was drawing. Instead, I only needed to focus on what I was drawing. It turned out easier than I thought it would be to make new art habits. And now I can use either keyboard or drawing pad to not only make pixel art, but perhaps try other art forms as well. I had expanded my skill set with some good old dedicated practice. Just like this circle, no one is perfect, but that doesn't mean we can't try to always improve. Thanks again to XPPen for sending me a drawing tablet to make this video possible, and thanks to my channel members for supporting me, as well as anyone who watches, subscribes, and comments, all the things. You all make it possible for me to keep making videos like this. Thank you so much, and have a beautiful day.